The Harry Potter world may seem like a wondrous place filled with magic, butterbeer, and chocolate frogs, but there are still some pretty dark and twisted parts to the stories. The series may have been kid-friendly at first, but it quickly did away with any age constraints to cast its spell on generations, thanks in part to some surprisingly grown-up elements. From suggestive names to infuriating character choices, here are some aspects of the Harry Potter series that take on a whole new meaning for adult audiences. Negligence or abuse. Dumbledore does a great job of passing himself off as a kindly, benevolent father figure to Harry and the rest of the student body. But if you take a close look at his actual actions, he's a pretty icy person who knowingly sends children into harm's way for the sake of an obscure prophecy. And his willingness to throw Harry to the wolves, sometimes literally speaking, is just part of the series' troubling trend of adults being negligent or even possibly abusive to these kids. Hagrid regularly writes out roadmaps for the main trio to waltz into danger.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that.
The faculty is filled with crazy people, and even the parents are pretty lousy. How else could you explain Hermione's folks, who are muggles, allowing their 11-year-old to run through a wall and hop on a train they never even saw? Or how no one bothered to check on baby Harry Potter for a decade after he was dropped off at the doorstep of an aunt and uncle everyone knew were terrible. Good adulting, everybody. The Ministry of what? There are tons of pseudo-political commentaries contained in the Harry Potter series. Gellert Grindelwald tries to enslave the Muggle population by way of a global wizarding war that, not coincidentally, rages alongside the real-life events of World War II. Voldemort and his Death Eaters fight for genetic supremacy over half-bloods and muggles like some of the worst villains in history. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the stories is that the Ministry of Magic remains in place without any checks or balances and seems to oppress certain classes of wizards. They have a totalitarian approach to justice, with boundary-free surveillance options at their disposal and an army of soul-sucking dementors who inflict cruel punishment on prisoners. They're also in charge of all the money and sometimes distribute assets unfairly between various families. It just goes to show that even at its best, the wizarding world is never truly free. Just ask the house elves. Fat shaming. It gets a laugh out of a lot of readers, but the way J.K. Rowling writes about Dudley Dursley in the earliest installments of the Harry Potter series is kind of troubling. Although she has plenty of faults to choose from while writing about Harry's spoiled cousin, she pays a lot of attention to the fact that he's portly, or, as she writes it, the size of a young killer whale. Descriptions of Dudley's pigly little eyes and his resemblance to a pig in a wig read as especially cruel and unnecessary in retrospect, even if Rowling has insisted she's against fat shaming. Sexual innuendos. The Harry Potter books may be meant for kids, but certain parts belong in the restricted section. For example, there's the Ingorgio spell, which seems like a poor choice of name on Rowling's part, and is probably the only explanation for how Hagrid's father made Whoopi with a giantess.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that.
Then there's the fact that these are all teenage students who've had no sex ed coursework at all. Some have traced the timing of Nymphadora Tonk's conception to her parents' teen years. Rowling herself has said she didn't mean to encourage teen pregnancy in the story, but thanks to a dirty Easter egg in the Marauders map from the Prisoner of Azkaban movie, we know Hogwarts could get pretty steamy with or without proper education about safe sex. Wasted gifts. As creative and thorough as Rowling was when creating the Potterverse, there are some aspects of the stories that become pretty frustrating in hindsight. Snape has the gift of legilimency, for example, but doesn't bother using it to figure out that Barty Crouch Jr. is drinking Polyjuice potion to disguise himself as Mad-Eye Moody in the Goblet of Fire. Seems like that might have been important. And Hermione's time turner, a literal time travel device, could have been used for far more important things than overloading her school schedule and springing an animal from execution. Harry could have probably used that luck potion he gets in Half-Blood Prince to help him defeat Voldemort, and Minerva McGonagall's shape-shifting skills should have given her an upper hand in undermining Dolores Umbridge, who just so happens to be a sucker for cats.
And the consequences may be severe.
Instead, all of these elements just come and go as trivial moments of convenience, despite the fact that there is an all-out war in motion. And let's not forget how casually Dumbledore gifts Harry one of the 3 sacred Deathly Hallows, the Cloak of Invisibility, long before he could come anywhere near appreciating its true value.
Whoa! My body's gone!
Perverted poltergeist. Harry Potter fans might be inclined to feel sorry for moaning Myrtle, since she's obviously a sensitive person who didn't deserve to die at such a young age. But that doesn't excuse her posthumous perversions. In the Goblet of Fire, she has a habit of sneaking in on boys in the bathtub and spying on them without their permission.
Hello, Harry. Oh, long time no see. Oh.
Stoner House. House Hufflepuff boasted some of the nicest and most serene students of the Hogwarts bunch, and there may have been a reason for the relaxed attitudes. Not only does the name of their house sound kind of like it endorses huffing and puffing, but Hufflepuffs tended to excel at herbology, loved to laugh, and lived right by the kitchens. Coincidence? Weasley weirdos. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, the Dark Lord's sniveling sidekick Peter Pettigrew is eventually spotted alive and well on the Marauders map that Fred and George Weasley have been holding on to. That's how he's ultimately discovered to be disguised as Ronald's pet rat. But if he's always visible on the map, and the Weasley twins have full access to it, and in theory would check in on their younger brother once in a while, they have to know he has unexpected company in his room each night, and just ignore it. You don't need magic powers to see that's pretty messed up. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.